Well, we were approached. I think both we and Marvel were approached by Disney it's like, you guys want to do a crossover, and we were like, okay, you twisted our arm. Okay, we'll do it.
If
We'll
you
do
put a
it.
gun to our
Yes,
head,
if
sure.
we have to play around with those guys, okay. We were both big fans of Marvel from when we were very young. I used to collect Spider-Man.
And I was learned to draw by tracing over Iron Man comics, so I still have a bunch of those from my youth.
I don't have any of them. My mom threw them all out.
Thanks, Mom.
One day she
Well
was
done.
cleaning my room and said, "Well, you'd read them all, right?" And I was like, That's not the point. I hadn't read them 30 times. I could have. I had like these two huge arcs. I forget how many I had, but she was like, "They were just taking up space, honey." So it made me very sad, but it was great to be able to play in that sandbox with those characters.
The story just sort of evolved. We have a great brain trust of creative writers, and we literally had the opportunity to get everybody in a room and just figuring out what the best way to integrate them was. And so it was a lot of brains and a lot of big Marvel fans that work on our show, really, working to make sure that it was something that was not only funny, but was very true to the characters and derived humor from who they were, not by poking fun at them or ridiculing them in any way. We were all about as protective of the Marvel characters as we would be of our own. It's better than anything that's ever been on television.
On any media, actually. I think it puts Citizen Kane. Citizen Kane looks like Dumb and Dumber next to this show. It's they'll be writing books about this special and teaching it in film school.
Yeah, clearly.
It is. Well, we are. We don't want to oversell it, but it is the best thing ever done
It's not
in media.
hyperbole in
That's
any
not,
way.
No. It was really fun, and because we feel like we know them almost as much as we know our own characters. We found out that we don't actually know them all that well. A couple of times we
Didn't know them as well as we thought.
Yeah, we had in an earlier draft we had Iron Man flying around with Thor's hammer and hitting things when they got their powers switched, and we were told that wasn't the way it worked. That's all about worthiness, not power.
Yeah.
Wielding Mjolnir is about worthiness, not power. And we had this whole conversation. Well, what can we have him do? Can we have him fly? No, we can't do that because
Lightning.
that's with the.
Weather.
It's with both of those things are with the hammer, and so we said we should just put that conversation into the show between Iron Man and Thor, and so that's almost verbatim the conversation we had with the Marvel execs, and when we showed that to them, they just laughed out loud because they remembered that conversation as well, and they said that's a perfect way to handle it.
It was fun learning, those voices of those characters and learning how to integrate them in our world, keep them who they were. But yeah, we've been writing the same, dialogue for the same characters for 6, almost 7 years. And this was kind of a great joy to say, oh great, a whole new batch of folks. It was a lot of fun.
Doofenshmirtz was just a character that I did basically when I would play with my sisters when I was young. If I was the bad guy, I would talk like this.
And which I didn't even remember. They both remember that very well. They were like, well, it just sounds like you to us, because that's whenever you were the bad guy, that's what you would do. And I was like, but
I just pitched it this way, and the exec said, you should do the voice. And I was like, okay, I will.
Now,
I'll practice.
it was I could never hear anybody else, and then from the time he started doing that, when we were pitching it to each other, it's like clearly that's the voice that needed to be there. And in the Monogram thing, I just stole because when we were pitching it, I wanted him to be the most trustworthy man in America. So that's my version of Walter Cronkite, which I always used to do, and and that's the way it was, and that's kind of where Monogram came from.
Yes.
You don't think about it at the time. It's
he
just
shakes his jowls a lot when he does it. Well,
Whenever
that's the way it was.
whenever I start to do the voice, I start by going, and Agent P, that's the most important thing you could possibly do today. So that's where that came from.
I think he would say,
Probably.
I think that's, I think that's all he really has to say.
I would assume it would have an Australian accent.
Yeah, you would think. You would think he is a platypus, either Australian or New Zealand.
New Zealand.
He
Either
might
one of those.
He might sound like the guys in the kung fu movies, which were all dubbed by New Zealanders.
Yeah.
Just slightly
Kung
New
Fu is
Zealand.
better than your kung fu any day, Lang Chow.
There, that would be the voice of Perry the Platypus if you ever talk. Yes.